You're looking for help off the waiver wire in your fantasy baseball league? Good, you should be. It doesn't matter if you are off to a hot start, first place, doesn't matter if you're last place, no matter what, you should always be active looking for some of these players who can help your team, even if it's just in the short term. So, just like you're passing by your local Krispy Kreme, let's go and check and see who's hot now. And we have no choice, we have to start in Paris. All right, I get it. We see you, Kyron Paris. I'm convinced you're worth adding. And a lot of people have lately, but right now there's still at least a third of Yahoo leagues and over half of ESPN leagues where Paris has not been picked up. Now, it has taken some time to really fully buy into him as being worth an ad, and that should be no surprise because this is the most so far out of nowhere story of the early part of this season. He's had a taste of the majors in each of the last two seasons, and across 105 plate appearances in 2023 and 2024 with the Angels, he hit for a 110 average with one home run. So naturally, this season, in his first 34 plate appearances, he has five home runs and he's already stolen four bases. It's almost shocking if you look at the latest route where the Angels put up 11 on Tampa Bay. He actually didn't get in on it 0 for 3, which is the most surprising part of it. So that lowered his average to 393. But this guy's hitting for power. We know he already has the speed. He's starting every day. He qualifies in multiple positions. I mean, really, there's no excuse not to pick him up everywhere. And so I don't know how long this will last. And I have the right to be skeptical. Let's look at not only his recent past, but also this is not really a highly touted prospect. I mean, his plus tool is supposed to be the speed. Okay, we already knew he could maybe potentially steal some bases. This power surge is something completely new. Even in the minors, his high for a season was 14 home runs at the double A level, and that was across basically a full season. So I know I might sound like Two-Face here, but on the one hand, it's like, look, he's this red hot, he's doing all the, you've got to pick him up. And I'll say that about anybody who is hot. It's okay to pick up and stream while he's hot, and then as soon as he gets cold, you cut him. No big loss, right? Unless you dumped a ton of fab on him. Now, I would not do that because I do not believe this is going to be a full-fledged breakout. So don't go crazy bidding him up, but certainly worth streaming, somebody worth picking up if you can get him for very little. On the other hand, again, do not expect this to last, especially the power. He will cool down big time, and he might still want to being useful over the full season, especially if he does hold down second base. Maybe his average will be decent. He will definitely get you some steals. So there's that. But we've got to be realistic here. I mean, this not only came out of nowhere, but it's still a very small sample size. And no, I'm not at all bitter here. The fact that he's taking Christian Moore's spot, who I thought would be the Angel second baseman to break out this year. We'll see. The same goes for Spencer Torkelson, who you already know. I mean, this guy does definitely have the prospect pedigree. He was supposed to be the next Pete Alonso, basically. And man, I wasn't even sure if he was going to be up with the Tigers this season. A lot of people weren't sure he was going to make the club either. He did. And now all of a sudden, we're seeing not only the best version of Torque, but maybe what we should have seen all along. Is he finally figuring it out? Well, I'm going to be a healthy skeptic as I usually am on this, but at the same time, I mean, optimistic because we know the power is clearly there. It's just you got to make the contact, and he's doing that so far. So he does have three home runs, but he's also hitting 311, and that's the most encouraging thing. 51.7% launch angle sweet spot percentage, which basically means he is barreling the hell out of the ball. The biggest change, which to me shows that this could last, is he's crushing breaking balls. And that's something that, well, a lot of power hitters, that's the problem, right? You can tee in on the fastball and wait for your pitch, but once the breaker comes, you can't handle that slider or whatever it is. But he has so far figured it out, and maybe that's the key. Now, of course, like any power hitter, he's at a high point right now. There might come a lull, but maybe he can figure it out and not have such a low and maybe continue to peak again later in the season. So I will buy into Torkelson right now. And I was really mostly hesitant to buy in on him before the season because I didn't like what I read when he said something about, I don't watch film. I don't look at the analytics and the stats. I just kind of like to go out and feel, how I'm going to hit. And that worries me because, look, I get it, having the feel and all that, but come on, you're just going to completely ignore facts and stats and all that. I mean, look, what he's doing is working fine. He's supposed to be this great hitter. Let's see if it happens. The Tigers are a legit offense these days. So go ahead and grab Torkelson and just keep a close eye in case the strikeouts do return. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, we have Jung Ho Lee for the Giants, a guy who will absolutely not give you power, but he'll also definitely not strike out a lot and should hit for average. This feels like redemption for Lee because this is a player I thought could do great things last year. And man, it was a season to forget his major league debut with the Giants. And it was cut short kind of mercifully because of an injury. But the Giants bought his rights because he is a professional hitter, can hit for average, brings some speed and great defense. That's what he is doing now this year. So this doesn't surprise me at all. Just know what you're getting here. Yes, batting average. He's still going to be near the top of that order, if not leadoff. But even if they keep sticking with him third in the order, hey, great, fine. Get some RBI ops. And he is stealing despite not being first or second. And this is the big change from last year and really the biggest disappointment, not just his batting average. Okay, well, basically everything was disappointing last year. But it's kind of odd to see that last year he only stole 2 bases in 37 games, and he was caught stealing 3 times. And this year, just like that, in only 11 games, he's already stolen 3 bases, surpassing last year's total, and he hasn't been caught once. His expected batting average of 359 early on is in the 97th percentile, and that exit velocity, that hard hit rate, you know what? They're not great, but it's okay because again, you should not go into this expecting power. If he can get you some steals, maybe even 20 plus by the time the season is over, that's great. Now, over in Milwaukee, there's an outfielder who's been on a surge, and it's not the guy that I was all over, and I still am mostly in on Garrett Mitchell, but Sal Frelick is having himself a nice week. In fact, coming off a 6 game hitting streak, and you look at this whole early part of the season, all of 2 weeks, but in the first 12 games the Brewers have played, there's only 2 games in which he hasn't gotten a hit. And then you add in the fact that just this past week, he's stolen 3 bases. Now you've got some fantasy value. Now, Frelick does have a little more power upside than a guy like Jung Ho Lee, but I still think that Garrett Mitchell's ceiling is higher, and we'll see if he really starts to take off. But it's interesting that while Mitchell has sitting sometimes against the lefties, Frelick has pretty much been an everyday player. He just sat for the first time this season, but based on the way they're using him, yeah, this is somebody who you can keep in there, which is nice in a deeper league that you don't have to wonder, about how many at bats you might get by season's end. Also, nice to see that Frelick a lot of times is hitting fifth or sixth in the order. Just imagine the RBI opportunities he might get if William Contreras actually shows up and gets hit one of these days. And then those of you in deep, very competitive leagues where it's hard to find a good bat on the waiver wire, I got you. You could definitely get Pavin Smith, Diamondbacks, first base slash outfielder, owned in fewer than 5% of fantasy leagues. Loyal Endgame viewers will know I have talked about Pavin Smith multiple times, and I drafted him way more than I even realized, especially in NFBC leagues, because he was freely available in those later rounds, and I am not regretting it. So here, before I start with the stat line, here's the grain of salt that you need with the fact that it's been 2 weeks, but so far, hitting 400, got 1 home run, 4 RBIs, but has scored 8 runs. Yeah, this is a hot start, and the whole Diamondbacks offense was really hot to start the season. But I have talked about Smith because I believe he's actually due, despite the fact that he's now 29 years old and been around for a few years in the majors. I think he's going to be one of these late age breakouts. Remember, his hard hit rate has continued to climb over the past couple years in an upward trajectory. And guess what's happening so far this year? It's going along that same trajectory. He had a robust 459 ex-Will Bacon last year, very healthy mark. And yes, I use that as an excuse to put healthy and bacon in the same sentence. So despite the fact that over the course of a season with Arizona, he's never finished with an average higher than 270, never hit more than 11 home runs in a season, never been a guy who's more than just a temporary streamer. I feel like this is the year. Now, he will sit against lefties. That is almost guaranteed because it's already happening. So, sure, you're going to have to platoon him. They've got Randall Gratchuk in there, and if you've got any sort of outfielder that you can pair with him, other than maybe Gratchuk, who isn't the worst, honestly, but just know that even though he won't play against lefties, what he will do against righties and the strong side of that platoon will make up for it. Now on to the pitchers. Got some exciting young pitchers that It might not be too late to pick up. Number one on the list, I think, has to be Casey Mize. I mean, you know, this guy was a former top pitching prospect, got the pedigree and all that. He also, like many Tigers pitchers and many young pitchers in general, just pitchers, period, has a long history of injuries. But he is back. He had a rotation spot coming out of spring, had a great spring, and he's not just continuing it, he's looking even better in the majors. And that's despite the fact that in his two starts, he didn't have cupcakes. He actually shut down the Yankees in his last time out. So he's off to a 2-0 start, a 0.77 ERA, 0.94 whip, and 12 Ks in 11 and 2/3 innings. If there's one blip on the radar here, it's the fact he's got 6 walks, which makes for a 13.6% walk rate early. Not going to worry about that when he's limiting hits and still striking out batters. It would be nice to see teammate Jackson Jobe, who I think a lot of people were now higher on heading into this season, kind of do the same thing, and he may eventually. But look, Mize has been around a little bit longer technically, and he's still got great stuff. So don't think twice here. If Mize is still available, just pick him up. And I will say, not too far behind is Max Meyer, top prospect for the Marlins. It's a little too soon to take victory lap for one of my breakout picks here, but man, he's looking like every bit of what we had hoped for. And I don't just say that as a Marlins fan, but also as somebody who drafted him in a lot of fantasy leagues and had high hopes. Look, we heard throughout this offseason that he was going to add not one, but 2 pitches, and he's done that. And I guess for those new pitches, it's actually kind of been mixed results. The sinker has done great, the sweeper, not so much. But at least he's mixing it up that gives hitters more than just 2 pitches to look at. And overall, the results you cannot argue with. He just completed his third start of the season, got a 1-1 record, an even 2 ERA, 1.11 whip, and 19 strikeouts in 18 innings. Now, his first start, you could be a little skeptical because it was against the Pirates. Okay, fine. His second start against the Braves was fine, but not great. He barely escaped with a quality start, 3 earned runs in 6 innings. But then he shut out the Mets for 6 innings. Really, I will say I was more surprised by his bad performance in the second half of last year coming off of injury and demotion than I was by what I've seen so far early this season. This is a guy with a huge ceiling as a pitcher. He's healthy now. He's motivated. He's got the pitch mix working. I mean, really, sky's the limit here. So I know some people are waiting on Yuri Perez, Edward Cabrera, and all these other Marlins pitchers. Just look at Max Meyer right here now. He's going to be their next ace. And sadly, I have to say that because, yes, I know Sandy Alcantara is going to get traded. Not quite so young and not quite as freely available, but you might still be able to grab Clark Schmidt if he wasn't stashed in your leagues. In Yahoo, that's almost a 50-50 proposition. And ESPN, I don't know. I guess people just don't need pitching. And Schmidt had I guess you could call it a mini breakout last year. Not amazing numbers, but very solid 2.85 ERA and a 1.18 whip. That wasn't over a whole lot of innings because he also suffered some injuries, including the one that has kept him off the shelf until just now. Now, he hasn't technically been activated as of right now when I'm recording this, but he's due to come off the IL very soon. Some people did the draft and stash thing, which is smart and which I definitely recommend doing if at all possible next year if you didn't do it. But look, with Schmidt, he may be out there. And you know what? What happens sometimes is funny. Sometimes somebody will stash a guy on IL, and then when he comes back, they realize, well, I don't have room for him, or I don't want to drop somebody else. And then they drop him after he becomes active. So look for him maybe to become free on your waiver wire if he isn't already. And a veteran who just came off the IL just as the season was starting is Tyler Mahle, who's with the Rangers. Easy to forget about Mahle because he's pitched a total of 38 innings over the last 2 years combined. You may remember a few years back with the Reds, looked like an upcoming star, not necessarily an ace type, all right, those things got carried away, but maybe a solid number 3 pitcher, maybe so high as a number 2 guy. And then as soon as he went to Minnesota, everything just kind of went derailed. So he's hardly got to do anything for the Rangers since going there, but so far in technically 3 starts, although his first one he didn't even finish 2 innings, but his last 2, I mean, he's looked better than he's ever been. Only allowed a total of 5 hits across his first 13 and 2/3 innings pitched. That makes for a 1.32 ERA, and he is 2-0. But the whip is a little bit higher because for some reason he has walked 7 batters despite only giving up 5 hits. So I guess he's being careful, which It was working so far. It's not going to work long term. Overall, you can't argue with these results either. And we know Molly is a guy who can be a solid, dependable, maybe I'll just say back of the rotation type of arm. I don't think that he was ever going to be as good as some people expected, but he's in a decent situation here. He's somebody I feel like should have a pretty high floor. And if he is feeling good, which he seems to be, then we can buy back in. Are we buying into Hayden Wesneski, who's now in the rotation for the Astros? Well, if I wasn't, then I wouldn't be bringing him up here, would I? Now, he's been forced into that rotation because, again, so many injuries for the Astros. That unfortunate accident with Spencer Arrighetti. He's on the shelf for weeks, and they're still waiting on some of those other arms to come back. So Wesneski should have a pretty long leash here. I thought that he might figure into the Cubs' plans as a starter at some point, but just kept bouncing back and forth between spot starts and long relief. And, every time he was a starter, he just didn't quite do enough to impress, and they couldn't find a spot for him. But now in Houston, he's definitely got the opportunity, and he is running with it. I can say that because he's coming off a start where he went 7 strong innings, gave up 2 runs and just 3 hits against the Mariners, struck out 5, walked none. Sure, the Mariners aren't a scary offense, but still, look, Wesneski, even last year, across both start and relief appearances, he was solid. I mean, he posted a 3.86 ERA, a 1.14 whip. This is a guy who has shown he has, at least at times flashed that potential. Maybe he puts it together now. And what I like, he's got 4 solid pitches, including a plus slider. He's got a pitch that can get batters out. So far, 11 strikeouts, only 3 walks. So, you know what? This is somebody I think we got to look at as potentially more than just a streamer. He was one of my favorite 2 start streamers for this week, and now I'm just going to take it a step further. And thankfully, not too many bullpens in flux this week. But if there's a closer, at least we think potential closer long term that is potentially still available, it's Jose Alvarado of the Phillies. Maybe we should just known all along he was the guy. But they got Jordan Romano, going to give Jordan Romano a chance, and Jordan Romano looks like he is dust. So maybe we should do like the Phillies apparently have done and just go back to Alvarado. He's got 2 saves now in just the past week, and this is a team that can definitely rack up save opportunities. And with Alvarado, it really wasn't just about opportunity because there were definitely questions about Romano, and Hoffman is gone. Strom is not going to be used as a closer. That's just not his role. And they just don't seem to want to use Kerkering in the 9th inning. So this could and should have been Alvarado's job all along, but it was kind of odd that last year he took a step back. And he's been such a dependable closer for a while, but last year a 4.17 ERA, and that strikeout rate dipped to 24%, even though he had a career mark of 30%. So it was definitely an off year, and with the addition of Romano, we thought Alvarado was just going to be a setup guy. But no, here we go. He's getting saves. He's looking great. So if he's still out there in your league with saves or holds, get him. Quick reminder, if you have not yet subscribed, give us a thumbs up, notifications, all those things that help our channel. Our goal is to help you win. So check out the live stream also every Sunday night, telling you about the best 2 start streaming pitchers, Wednesdays for the midweek check-in and live questions and answers, and everything that we got going on, our latest video, everything to help you win in fantasy.